All
Y'all got
right.
audio now? We have talked for a half hour.
Well, thank you, whoever told us we didn't
Thank
have
you,
audio.
Suzanne Bell.
The bottom line for those people who didn't hear is that we have an amazing expert tonight who's going to help us cut through all the noise when it comes to vaccines and all the controversies that you're hearing. We're going to tackle them head on with Dr. Donald Alcendor from Meharry Medical College. He is a top world-renowned virologist, vaccine researcher, expert in health disparities, and he's going to really help us understand what's real, what's hype, and put everything about vaccines in perspective. And
And
Wayne was just saying
right
to share.
right before that intern who set this up, we gotta get to that intern. We're
Gotta
gonna
get
we're gonna
to
find that intern. Every time it's a problem, it's the intern's fault.
it's
Dr.
the
Mel.
intern.
It's the
Sure.
intern. So look, but right now we're getting ready to go to what's what and what's been happening in health and wellness with the weekly recap.
All right. So what we got?
So look, first off, your fork, is it your brain's best friend? So Dr. Mel, I've been working on my health a little bit, actually a whole lot. And I keep hearing the Mediterranean diet is a recipe for brain health and dodging Alzheimer's. Truth or hype?
Well, it's mostly true based on recent evidence. There's a gene, ApoE4, which is a genetic variant that really ramps up your risk for getting Alzheimer's disease if you have that genetic variant. And so there was a recent study done that showed that eating the Mediterranean diet, which is mainly nuts, olive oil, fruits, fish, that these things help to balance our blood metabolites that are linked to developing dementia in people that have this genetic variant. And by eating the Mediterranean diet, essentially they cut their risk by 35%, which is
That's
significant.
huge. That's huge. We just did a
Yeah.
show last season on Alzheimer's, and we talked about the risk for Black people and people of color is even more.
Right. It is higher, as African Americans were twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's disease, although our risk is not as closely related to the ApoE4 variant as it is for Europeans, right? So that genetic variant is not showing up in African Americans as much as in Europeans. Nonetheless, this diet has had success in studies involving African Americans for both brain health as well as weight loss. So it also shows that even if you're a genetic carrier of something, genes are not destiny. What we eat and how we live definitely matters in our disease risk.
Well, that's important for me, Dr. Mel, because my dad, he wore Lee jeans, and I wear different jeans. I'm sorry. I mean, it was an
Alrighty
easy
then.
setup.
Put
It
a
was an
boom.
easy boom boom. Psh. Look, number 2, AI ain't ready for prime time with medical advice. Dr. Mel,
Okay.
so I heard on NBC that's still reputable, that a
Mhm.
guy asked Chat GPT how to cut salt out of his diet and ended up in a hospital hallucinating. Is that a thing?
So, yes, I saw the same story. It turns out that he developed a condition called bromism, which is caused by high levels of bromide, sodium bromide in the body, after he followed some bad AI advice. So, he basically asked AI, how can what can I substitute for table salt? Because he was concerned about hearing, risks of high blood pressure and other things that could result from high intakes of salt. ChatGPT advised him to switch to sodium bromide, and that's not really good for humans. And one of the side effects is hallucinations, which he ended up getting hospitalized for that and other things.
So the other things were probably stupidity because sodium bromide is not for human consumption, right? So
Correct.
so the moral of the story is don't let AI write a check yo can't cash.
Thank you for self-censorship. Yes, AI is not a nutritionist, AI is not a doctor. Talk to a healthcare professional about your health concerns or go to a recognized university or hospital website to look at their health education topics.
And there you have it.
That's the moral of the story. Yes.
Moral of the story. Don't let
Yes.
AI write a check your can't cash.
There we go.
Self-censorship. So look, number 3, clear vapes are clearly hiding risk.
Mhm.
So Dr. Mel, as you will have it, you are on the cutting edge of all these topics. Because this happened this weekend. I saw somebody this weekend with one. I keep seeing these clear vapes everywhere. Companies are making it seem like clear vapes mean it's safer. What's up with that?
So looks can definitely be deceiving. Clear vapes have little to no added flavorings, but that does not mean that they're safer than flavored vapes, which are not safe. So some still contain harmful chemicals like synthetic coolants that that make it easier to take deeper breaths and inhale deeper, and they can therefore, when these coolants hit your system, they can elevate your blood pressure, elevate your heart rate even more than the regular flavored vapes do, which are not good for you.
Now, the flavored vapes, they they are fruity and candy like ones, right?
Yeah.
They appeal to the teens, right?
Yes, and menthol in particular is popular among Black young people. The odorless synthetic coolants that I talked about, they make that
Mhm.
inhaling easier, like I said, so you'll take bigger puffs, you end up getting more nicotine and more chemicals. These things all increase your addiction risk and also can down the line raise your risk of cancer as well as heart disease. So not a good idea.
And the heart effects were seen in healthy young people as young as 18, right?
Yes,
So the
absolutely.
bottom line here is clear does not mean harmless. Don't let a clear vape write a check you can't cash. So look,
All right.
let me
Is that
just
the
say this
name of
one.
this
I know we got
show?
to move on. I know we got to move
Yeah.
on. But look, I got to say this one thing. I was at a reunion of my fraternity, uh, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Theta Theta chapter celebrated its 50th anniversary, and I was in a room with some young brothers, and one uh, clearly undergraduate brother who was in the
Mhm.
room. I guess he thought he was being cool and whipped out the vape in a
Pulled it
hotel room.
out.
First of all,
Okay.
you're not supposed to
So it's
smoke in any
indoors.
building
Right. In
in the
Maryland.
state. I don't even want to
Yeah.
say what state, but in this
Right.
state, you're not supposed
Mhm.
to smoke in any building. And he clearly thought that vaping wasn't smoking, but he pulled it out to be cool and pulled a vape. And I had to pull him aside and educate him on the perils of vaping.
Mhm.
But
Good. I'm
really, the
glad.
perils of vaping in a hotel that he wasn't paying for and that had other people's name attached to it. And you know what happens to people when they do that? The popcorn lungs, we talked about that
Mhm.
earlier, but we didn't
Yeah.
talk about the foot and the behind, because that will definitely happen to a young person who wants to vape in a room that he didn't pay for in a hotel.
Well, I'm glad that you spoke to him both about the the illegality of it, but also about the health effects on his body, because that's what we're all about. Empowering people with things that they might not have known before so that
Right.
they can make the right decisions. So
Right. You are now
good
empowered
luck to that young brother. Good luck
not
to
to
him.
have a vape write a check your can't cash. All right, moving
All
on.
right.
You know what's next, Dr. Mel? You know what's next?
What's next? Is it
Debunk.
there we go.
Stopping misinformation in its tracks.
So I got a I got a text from Bobby butthead. And Bobby said, hold on, did we do that already? We did that one already, Dr.
We
Mel.
did with that one. I
Oh my
believe
God. You
that
know
I
what?
think
Hold
it's
on. We're
Yolanda
not finished.
YouTube.
We not. Here
Didn't
we
you
go.
get a text
The
from Yolanda
weekly
YouTube?
debunk.
Okay.
Stopping misinformation in its tracks.
But Bobby Butthead said he got a text. So everybody on social media had a way to lose weight. And Yolanda, he watches Yolanda YouTube and swears by this apple cider vinegar cure that makes you drop 30 pounds in 3 months. I said, I don't know about that. Excuse me, Dr. Mel, is that true?
So there is no solid evidence between apple cider vinegar and any sort of meaningful lasting weight loss. There are a lot of existing studies, but they're weak because they're either very small numbers of people, or they're flawed in the way that they did the study. So claims about calorie burning or sustained weight loss just aren't believable. Apple cider vinegar is safe in small amounts, like 2 tablespoons per day. It's even better if you mix it with food, like on a salad. Um, but everything has potential side effects. So, apple cider vinegar can interfere with some blood pressure medicines and even insulin, as well as some supplements. So, it's important to talk to your doctor if you're thinking about using apple cider vinegar for anything. And lastly, if you want to lose weight and keep it off safely, a safe rate is 1 to 2 pounds a week. So, I don't know about the 30 pounds in 3 months, but that's from eating a balanced diet, regular physical activity, not from sort of a popping a apple cider vinegar pill or drinking apple cider vinegar regularly. The evidence just isn't there for that at this point.
And it's a company out there that advertises and targets. I guess they know people overweight, so they target us for that gummy, the apple cider gummy.
The apple cider yeah, there are all kinds of
With sugar.
formulations, but none of them are right. None of them are proven.
Like
Well,
that's going to help you.
right, exactly. Well, thank you, Wayne. We're going to see you back after we talk to Dr. Alcendor. And I want to make sure that everybody puts all their questions in the chat as we go along, because we're going to have a chance to get to them. And I know you're going to have a lot, because we're going to be talking about vaccines. We know vaccines have changed the course of history, but not without significant controversy. And that controversy now seems to be at a fever pitch. Who should we trust? How do we make the best decisions for ourselves and our families when it comes to vaccines? To help us cut through that noise, we are joined by a true expert, Dr. Donald Alcendor. He is a renowned virologist, faculty at both Meharry Medical College as well as Vanderbilt University. His work focuses on infectious disease as well as health disparities. He's a well-known expert in vaccines, in COVID-19, in HIV. He's advised the American Lung Association and the federal government at the FDA, as well as HHS. And we're truly happy to welcome you to the show tonight, Dr. Alcendor. All right. I think we might need to turn your mic on so that we can hear you. I know you said that you're happy to be here. My lip reading skills are honed to a T.
Okay. Can you hear me?
All right. I can hear you now. Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to jump right in so that we can talk about vaccines and safety issues around vaccines. But we have to first start off setting the table. So can you break down, how do vaccines teach our immune system to fight disease?
So the first thing you want to do is introduce the immune system to a small component of the infectious agent that you want to protect against. When it comes to a virus, this is going to be like a protein on the surface of a virus. We call it a glycoprotein. That glycoprotein can be put as part of a vaccine formulation and injected through the bloodstream. And then the immune system recognizes this. And by way of recognition, it will develop a number of immune effector cells that will interact with that antigen. When these immune effector cells interact with the antigen in a presentation type manner, then what you'll have is immune effector cells developing the capacity to produce antibodies and to produce cytotoxic cells that are trained to bind to the infectious agent in its normal form when you're infected, and develop cells that can actually destroy cells that are infected with that infectious agent. So you have two arms of the immune system, what we call the humoral arm, which is antibodies, and of course the cell-mediated arm, which is immune effector cells in the form of cytotoxic T cells. Both of these arms can be deadly when it comes to an infectious agent, whether it's a bacteria or a virus like COVID.
So it's stimulating the body to make these two separate fighting units, if you will, the antibodies and these cells that kind of kill on contact.
That's
Um,
correct.
Wonderful. Now, some people, including public officials, government figures, wrap their concerns about vaccines in the fact that they're not natural cures, and that natural cures or a healthy lifestyle is really the way to go about protecting yourself against infectious disease. Can you explain why that is confusing and why getting vaccinated is not incompatible with living a healthy lifestyle?
So a healthy lifestyle, meaning a healthy diet and of course exercise and so forth, can actually potentiate the immune system, but it will not protect you from a specific infection like a virus infection. COVID, polio, smallpox, you name it, pertussis. The idea is that the antibodies and the effector cells that are generated from an antigen through a vaccination offers you specific protection against a pathogen. And again, no matter how well you eat.
When you say pathogen, you mean an infectious agent like a virus or a bacteria.
Like a virus or a bacteria. And so the idea is that vaccines are very specific. And again, vaccines will protect you against future infections as well. So the idea is that the memory cells from those, what we call B cells, and the memory cells, which we call cytotoxic T cells, they will remember that infection or that presentation through the vaccine, and they will respond in a very quick manner that's going to be very effective against an infectious agent actually infecting you. And so a vaccine is a prophylactic measure that allows you protection before you're infected. And the idea is that homeopathic medicines or so-called cures for certain types of diseases, many of them have no scientific evidence support the notion that they are protective in any way in terms of prevention or in terms of treatment for an infection of some sort.
Right. Like vitamin A and measles. Like we've been hearing that you're supposed to take vitamin A to protect against measles, and there's absolutely no evidence for that.
That is correct.
Even though vitamin A is natural, quote unquote.
Yes, vitamin A can be natural. And again, the way people get vitamin A is through something like cod liver oil that will have high levels of vitamin A and vitamin D. And during the Texas outbreak of measles, there was reports told that vitamin A was an intervention for measles, and many of the parents went and got mega doses of vitamin A to give to children that they were expect to be susceptible to measles. It turns out that high mega doses of vitamin A can cause liver dysfunction, and many of these children had to be hospitalized because of taking mega doses of vitamin A.
And a simple MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, would have done the trick.
That is correct. And to date, as we speak here tonight, there has never been a death associated from an MMR vaccine in a healthy child. There have been some, what I would call very rare deaths in children that were immune compromised due to side effects associated with an MMR vaccine, but never in a healthy child we have seen a death associated with the MMR vaccine.
But we're seeing deaths with measles in unvaccinated children.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
So talk to me though about, you meant there's never been a death. Talk to me about autism. Of course, there are people out there pointing to specific vaccines. childhood vaccines specifically, and saying that they're harmful to children because they lead to autism, which has been debunked multiple times. But we can't do a show on vaccines without talking about that, because that's a
Yeah.
huge concern, I know, for parents.
Yes. So I sat on the Vaccine Injury and Compensation Program for a long time. And the idea is that we were presented with cases that came from doctors that suggested that a child that got a vaccine developed autism over time. And so they were saying that the vaccine was causative in that autism. And the idea is that they were saying that there were formulations within that particular vaccine that gave the child this particular outcome. So when we looked at all of the data, there was no data that supported a formulation component or the vaccine itself associated with causative effect of autism in children that received the MMR vaccine. And so to date, as we speak tonight, there is no data that supports the notion that a vaccine like the MMR vaccine causes autism. And so this was a common misconception that was drawn out by anti-vaxxers for a very long time. And the whole idea is that they saw an increase in autism over time and looking for ways to explain that. And most recently, they are suggesting that autism may be caused by other things as well. And so there's a great concern. And again, folate and other kinds of things and other things that might be considered causative when it comes to autism, there's no information that suggests that. And of course, most recently, the use of Tylenol or acetaminophen by pregnant women may predispose their children to development of autism. The information of that is not supported as well. There was a study done looking at thousands of pregnant women over time that took acetaminophen during their pregnancy, and there was no associated autism in that study. And so I think, again, acetaminophen is considered the most mild analgesic that, or for that
and fever reducer.
And fever reducer for pregnant women to take. And again, there's nothing really better for them if they have to take it. But again, it's reported and found that taking acetaminophen for the shortest amount of time in the lowest doses is recommended for pregnant women. And again, when you hear top levels of government say, don't take acetaminophen because the possibility of your child having autism, then I think what you'll see is a lot of people coming forward, possibly with litigation, to support the notion that I took Tylenol during my pregnancy, and now I have a child with autism. And so this becomes, a scatter kind of event for the Department of Health in order to try and recover from misinformation that has been out there.
Right. And people who have children with autism are always looking for reasons and treatments, and it's understandable, because you always want the best for your children, but there's just no evidence to link vaccines or Tylenol at this point to autism at all. And the idea of something that's causative versus it just correlates. Happy Meals, for example, have also increased in use in the same rate that autism has increased in use. It's just as filled with fallacy to say that Happy Meals are related to autism, right? So we just really have to be careful when things happen together, to be careful to not say one thing causes the other. Right.
We saw this for COVID as well, where we saw a conflation between association and causation. And the idea is that you had a 99-year-old person getting a vaccine for COVID, and a week later they died. And so the idea is this, is that, was COVID the cause of that person dying? Was there something associated with age and a pre-existing condition? And again, how do you prove that? Now, in science, the way we would prove that is to look in the batches that that individual got and follow people that got those batches that have the same health conditions, the age, and so forth. And do we see a correlation? And that's in science, that's the way you look at trying to associate an event with causation. And so again, you know, when it comes to autism, autism is a multifactorial disease. And again, there's a genetic component. More than likely, there's an environmental component as well. Some of those things you simply cannot avoid. And so we don't believe that autism could ever be caused by one simple thing like Tylenol.
Right. And I just want to be clear, you sat for years on the Division of Vaccine Injury and Compensation
That
at
is correct.
HHS. So you're speaking from a platform of having investigated and having multiple reams of evidence put in front of you to analyze and absolutely no association. On the
That is
flip
correct.
side, on the flip side, tell us some of the diseases that have been wiped out or nearly wiped out through public health vaccine campaigns.
So when we think about eradication, you have to think about an infection where there's no transmission of the infection, no ongoing continuous transmission of an infection for 3 years. That is defined by the WHO as being eradication of a disease. And when we look at human disease, there's only one. Smallpox is the only disease that has been eradicated from humans. And the idea is that the last case of smallpox was in 1977. But again, in order to eradicate disease, what you're looking at is a tremendous vaccination campaign. You're looking at a tremendous amount of community buy-in. You're looking at the world being involved in this. This has to be a worldwide campaign. And that's what happened with smallpox. Smallpox was a devastating disease. We're talking about a disease that had a 30% fatality rate, which is quite serious. We're talking about smallpox was so terrible that it was one of the first biological warfare agents practiced, giving blankets.
Brought to the new world. Yes.
That is exactly right. A devastating disease that we have dealt with for thousands of years. And the idea of being able to eradicate smallpox was basically a worldwide, a global achievement. And again, some of the only one other virus has been eradicated in terms of viral infection, and that is rinderpest, which caused cattle plague. And again, decimated cattle back in the day. But again, the last rinderpest case was with 2011. And so the idea here is that only 2 infections that we know of in humans is smallpox, in animals, and rinderpest. There's a couple infections that we're close to eradicating, but we still see outbreaks, and that is polio. We were hoping to get global eradication of polio. We do not see polio virus type 2 and polio virus type 3 circulating anymore in the world.
That's wonderful.
But we still see polio virus type 1 still circulating in some parts of the world. And again, that's where we are now with polio. We're very close, but we're seeing polio here and there, but we're very close. And again, it takes a tremendous campaign. It takes people that are not going to be hesitant about getting vaccines. And of course, buy-in on a global level to get rid of polio completely. We think that diphtheria and rubella will also follow because we don't see those infections popping up. They're very, very rare. And we're hoping that these devastating diseases back in the day will no longer be with us after a while.
And I can tell you just in my career, there was no chickenpox when I started. There was a lot of chickenpox, let me say. People used to have chickenpox parties to so that their kid would get chickenpox and get it over with, right? Now, because of the vaccine, the varicella vaccine, we see, chickenpox very, very rarely now, right? And then the same with measles. Again, we had almost gotten to a point where measles was extremely rare, but we seeing it come back in communities where vaccination rates have dropped. Can you talk
That
us
is
a little
correct.
bit about why is it that when vaccination rates drop, we're susceptible to having things come back, like measles, for example, that we're seeing these outbreaks now?
So when vaccinations drop, what happens is that the immune shield that the community has in terms of herd immunity, it is going to be brought down. And it's going to be brought down because you have new people coming into the population, new children are being born. Okay. And again, what's happened is that over time, immunity for some people will wane over time, and then they will be susceptible. You got those people that are immune compromised that cannot get a vaccine. You have the elderly and infants that are also going to be vulnerable to infection. So when herd immunity breaks down and you see reduced uptake of a vaccine, what you see is spikes of infections where you can have outbreaks, where you have susceptible populations that are either unvaccinated or, for that matter, cannot get a vaccine and they're still susceptible to infection. And so
Hmm.
that's mainly the reason.
So let's move to the COVID vaccine, right? A lot of people think COVID is just a cold now. Why does COVID vaccination and importantly, getting boosters at this time of year now, every year, why does that still matter?
Yeah, so from the beginning days of COVID, we have seen a surge of COVID both in the summer and in the fall. That has
Mhm.
happened since the beginning. We also see a surge of infections during that time as well. Mainly those infections are due to people whose immune protection has waned over time. And that's going to be in the elderly more than likely. So those vulnerable populations are more likely to get COVID. And this is where the COVID deaths that we're seeing now exist, in those populations that are elderly and or have underlying medical conditions that put them at risk. And so the
Mhm.
immune compromised and the elderly and those that have underlying medical conditions, these are the individuals where the immunity wanes. These are the individuals that should get boosters in particular. And so this is what we think is that it is of great concern to us now with the new guidelines for COVID. We know that the new vaccine that would be the booster for COVID right now has been approved. That is the 2025-2026
Mhm.
COVID vaccine has been approved. However, with new policies put in place, they're saying only people over 65 years of age and people that are at high risk for infection that would have serious disease are now eligible for that vaccine. Everything else seems to be confusion and concern because don't know if they're eligible to get a COVID vaccine or not. We have taken one step further at Meharry. Walgreens is coming to Meharry on October 9th to vaccinate the whole institution. And
Okay.
again, this is with COVID, flu, pneumococcal, Tdap, shingles, RSV, and of course, hepatitis B. So they will come with 7 different vaccinations. We believe that COVID is still alive and well, and that those high risk populations should be boosted, along with other people as well, because if they're unvaccinated and their immune protection has waned, regardless of age, regardless of condition, they should be boosted for COVID. And
Right.
so, again, it's about who you protect in the community because you're not a person that's going to spread the infection. That's how you protect communities that are vulnerable. And of course, particularly those individuals, because of being allergic to something in the formulation of the vaccine, or for that matter, being immune compromised or having a clinical condition that doesn't allow them to be vaccinated, they need to be protected as well.
Right. And nobody wants to get long COVID. We have seen that there's evidence that getting vaccinated decreases the risk of long COVID, which can happen to anybody,
That's correct.
regardless of risk factor, age, severity of the infection. And so you do want to get vaccinated and boosted so that you can decrease your risk of long COVID. I think that's gotten lost in all the confusion. And the
It
other
did.
thing I think it's important for people to know is that you can still get vaccinated for COVID. Most insurances still cover vaccination for COVID, even if you're
Mhm.
not in the sort of the new guidelines around eligibility. So if you still want to get vaccinated and boosted for COVID, check with your insurance. They cover it, and also check with your pharmacy if you're going to a pharmacy to get it, to make sure that that you don't require a prescription. Um,
Yeah.
most states, I know Georgia is an exception, but most states allow you to get a COVID vaccine now without a prescription. But just double check for your state and check with your local pharmacy.
Yeah. I want
Um,
to say something about long COVID just very
mhm,
quickly. It turns out that every time you get COVID, you have the chance of developing long COVID. However, if you've been boosted, that chance is dramatically reduced. So, in terms of people that got an infection with COVID, about 1 in 10 would get long COVID. But when they've been boosted or been vaccinated, that goes to down to about 3 in 10.
wow.
About 3 times less than
Right,
if you were not. Uh,
right.
Vaccinated. And so it turns out that getting a vaccine allows you to clear any residual virus in your system. And again, long COVID has always been associated with people that were hospitalized for COVID. People that had severe disease are more likely to get long COVID. And so, again, staying out of the hospital, more than likely, you're less likely to get long COVID. And of course, long COVID can happen to children as well as adults.
Right. Exactly. I want to get one last question in before we open it up to the audience, and that's AI. AI is in everything, in every conversation now. How do you see AI figuring into this whole vaccine conversation, um, either from new vaccines or tracking disease outbreaks? What's the future?
Yeah, I think AI has a lot of things that makes the future very bright when it comes to vaccines. We saw the mRNA vaccine platform change vaccine production in very many different ways. And I think AI can just add to that. A subset of AI is called machine learning. Machine learning can predict changes in data over time, and it can
Mhm.
predict changes in viral variants over time. So
Mm.
those viral variants, as a virus changes through evolution of these subvariants, what can happen is that AI can predict those changes for the future. And if you're
Mhm.
able to predict subvariant changes in subvariants in terms of nucleic acid changes, particularly within the spike protein of the coronavirus, then what you're able to do is to get ahead of any kind of emerging variants that likely to cause a pandemic. Now, this is the same thing for bird flu. You see what I'm saying? So it could be
Yeah.
done for any kind of virus that represents an emerging threat to
Mhm.
the community. And so doing that, I think, can be very important. The other thing that AI can do is that it can kind of predict when a vaccine will work against a particular infection as well. And this
Okay.
is a situation where the combination of mRNA technology and AI, we may have a chance to develop a vaccine for HIV. And this would be a
Wow.
groundbreaking moment. And the idea is that this would be something that would be a game changer.
Of
Something,
course.
a vaccine for HIV that would be effective and safe. And so we've
Mhm.
never seen that in the history of this country since the beginning of the HIV pandemic back in the early 80s. And so the possibilities are through the roof when it comes to AI and using
Yeah.
machine learning to predict changes in nucleic acids as a virus replicates, and you see these variants within a virus family change over time.
So we can be ahead of the changes that viruses inevitably go through that could potentially make them deadlier. And if we know
That's right.
that in advance, we can develop a vaccine in advance of
That
that.
is correct. And if we know exactly what antigens are important to protect you against HIV, the predictive value of machine learning, the machine learning component of AI, may provide us with that tool as well. So, in
That's
the
exciting.
last few
Yeah.
years, we have seen vaccines that we have been trying very hard to make. And now the possibility is there. One of the things about the mRNA vaccines that were very, somewhat of a breakthrough is we saw vaccine protection at levels in the mid-90s. We have very few vaccines that have effectiveness up in the mid-90s. And so to have vaccines that are in the mid-90s in terms of effectiveness, the possibility of having a flu vaccine that is better than 46% or 50% or sometime even in the 30s, we may see better outcomes in terms of protection because the vaccines are more effective.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you, Dr. Alcendor. I know that there are folks out there that have questions. We're going to go to Wayne to see what's been put in the chat that he can surface to us. Wayne, what are you seeing?
So we got a couple.
Share with us?
We have a couple of questions that I find incredible. One, this is fascinating, especially with the AI discussion. And Del Powell asks, who is filling the research void left at NIH and other research institutions?
Good question.
It's very hard because a lot of these people were career people. And when you spend 20 years researching and doing a lot of work and tomorrow you're gone, that 20 years, 30 years for some people, even more, that's gone too. So when you get rid of a workforce, you get rid of a knowledge base as well. And when you get rid of a knowledge base, the gap within that knowledge base for all of the research projects and programs that are ongoing is lost. When you say that you're not going to fund mRNA vaccine development or technology, you're saying a lot, because this could put us at risk for epidemics to come. And again, there's a lot of information that suggests that we will experience more epidemics. Getting ahead of these epidemics are very important. The development of mRNA technologies was developed 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And being able to be a modular type of construction, meaning that within a matter of weeks, you can reconfigure an mRNA vaccine for something that has changed very quickly. We see that now here with COVID, meaning that within a matter of a few weeks to a month, we can reconfigure a modular mRNA vaccine to change in ways that these subvariants would change. We have seen a virus that changes relatively easy. And we have been able to say, okay, using mRNA technology, we can keep up with the changes that these subvariants present us with as part of this ongoing COVID pandemic.
And all that knowledge, right, to your point, has been, I won't say eradicated because there are private companies that are still doing it, but our scientists that were funded through NIH that are working on that is a huge gap. It's a huge gap.
That's correct. And again, the NIH is to support the public, meaning that the NIH and the scientists there are generating things to support public health, you see. Now, companies, they're doing something else, but the NIH is funded by the federal government, by our tax dollars. And again, this has developed therapies and interventions to support public health. And that is their mission. You see what I'm saying? And so companies, their mission might be very,
they might have money in mind. You can't say it, I can say it. Views of Wayne Bruce are attached to Wayne Bruce, not anybody else. You can't say it, I can say it. Anyway, got another question. Here's number 2, and it comes from Daphne Jones. And she says, since Florida has banned vaccines, how long will it take to see the repercussions? Have they banned vaccines?
Yeah, I think there's a time limit on that. I don't think the banning has been done, but
hypothetically, if a state banned vaccines.
So the idea is that the Surgeon General in the state of Florida has made a comment in that they are supporting people to have their own choice to give their children vaccinations to go to public school. And again, there's a time limit for that to take effect, and we'll see if that really happens. But what we have to do is think about what vaccines have done for us over the years. Back in the day, going back to the 1850s, vaccinations were compulsory because smallpox was a devastating infection, meaning that your wife and husband, if they did not vaccinate a child by the time it was 3 months of age for smallpox, they could be fined or imprisoned. Wow. That's compulsory vaccinations. And so when we move ahead, mandatory vaccination for public schools changed everything, meaning that children were missing so much school because of infections that they got that were communicable in classrooms, kept them at home so often. So the idea of mandatory vaccination for public schools increased attendance of children. And the idea is that mandatory vaccination for public school have been under scrutiny by litigation for many years. It has been challenged. It has always won until now. And so the idea is that when you think about parents electing to say, I want my child to have an MMR vaccine or not, what you're saying is that parents sending their children to school that may get infected, they have to basically, you get vaccines for the other people that can't. So what you want to do is get the vaccine to protect yourself and the people around you that can't be vaccinated. So there is great risk to development of outbreaks of childhood preventable diseases in public schools that we have not seen. And what we're seeing is evidence of that now with measles. We've also seen a whooping cough outbreak as well. And the idea is that those infections that have been held at bay by routine mandatory vaccinations can start to pop up as outbreaks across the country, and like nothing we've seen in places like Texas. We're talking about 3 deaths associated with measles. The last time we saw a single death associated with measles was 2015, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've taken care of an infant with whooping cough. People probably don't even know what whooping cough is.
That's right. That's right.
But it can be deadly because the child is coughing so much that they can't eat. And so they get dehydrated and can die in that way, right? A lot of these diseases, the reason I think that this litigation is successful is because vaccines have been so successful in knocking out a lot of these diseases that people forget the horror of what it's actually like to have polio.
That is correct.
Or the horror of having a 2-month-old have whooping cough. They just don't know because they've never seen it before. So it's theoretical, but it's a real thing. It's a real thing. Millions of people died from these things before. That is correct.
That is correct. I talk to parents and I talk to them about vaccinations, and I ask them if you have children that go to school, and they all tell me yes. And I said, when is the last time your child came to you after getting a vaccination at the pediatrician and tell you that they had an adverse event associated with the vaccine? I never hear anything in those crowds. And the reason being is that it's because of vaccines. And I explained to them that vaccines are one of the most highly scrutinized public health interventions that we have ever seen and will see. And again, it's believed that we live 30 years longer than we did 100 years ago, in part to vaccines. You have to think about all the children that died of polio, children that died of measles, mumps. Children died of mumps back in the day when we didn't have the MMR vaccine. And I asked medical students, and I say to all of them, and I teach in the medical school and the dental school, I asked the dental school students, I said, how many of you in here have heard of a child dying of mumps and measles? None. But zero. I said, you ask your grandmother and she will remind you of the time when that happened. And the reason we don't know about this in our current day is because of that MMR vaccine. That MMR vaccine is 97% protected.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we
have
had the speed round.
I think
we
we
had the
get
speed
one
round
more
right here.
one more question.
One more
in.
question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, we got to wrap it up. And this comes from Ndidi Marcus. And Ndidi asks, what virus or potential pandemics are you keeping an eye on right now, domestic or international?
Yeah. So first of all, COVID. We're still seeing subvariants of the Omicron virus develop. Right now, we're looking at the Stratus variant and the Nimbus variant, but the Stratus variant right now represents about 80% of what we see in wastewater scans. And the way we track viruses like COVID is looking at wastewater. It turns out that COVID is sloughed off into the bile and will be in urine and feces, and you can basically detect COVID virus in wastewater. And that's how we're following COVID. Back in the day, we had Johns Hopkins, we had the CDC, we had many people collecting data associated with COVID. No more. The national and public health emergency declarations are over with COVID. The big money for all of that has gone away. And the idea now is that there are a number of viruses that we're keeping an eye on, but many of the Omicron subvariants we're keeping an eye on. We're also keeping an eye on bird flu. There are also the Nipah virus that can infect pigs and it can infect humans as well. And of course, these are some of the main virus types that we're looking at the moment. And so following them is very important. Understanding how they're changing is very important. And doing what we're doing now, and that is keeping up with the variants by making small changes in the vaccines using mRNA-based technologies is the way that we can keep up with the changes in the virus to allow people to get vaccinated with a current vaccine that will protect them against the virus that is presently in circulation.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Alcendor.
Thank you.
I know there are probably many, many more questions,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, it's time for us to go.
I understand.
You have been an amazing, amazing fount of knowledge. Thank you, of course, Wayne Bruce, for all you do. And we will be back here. Until then, remember, be wise, be well, and be health empowered. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.